Still looking for the promise.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
The president of Rhode Island College is back here on the set to advocate in this legislative session for the promise. You know, the couple of years worth of no charge tuition for those who qualify. And tonight we're going to hear what it is and what it isn't from his latest op-ed in the college newspaper. I've never been a fan of this idea. He knows that, but true to his sportsmanlike and athletic competitive disposition, he is here to battle your host on such. Welcome aboard. Nice to have you in. Let us check a couple of quick headlines. You know, Congress is acting like Congress is constitutionally charged to do. That is something that we need to recognize in this whole situation. So subpoenaing the Mueller report is going to be really fascinating, because if there is no cooperation on the full release of the report, this is going to be in the courts. And while Donald Trump has done a magnificent job, I think, of beating the living tar out of Congress, having a 4-page preview of this from the Attorney General, he is not a constitutional scholar by any stretch. And the polling data out there still says that most people want to see the Mueller report. Not a redacted Mueller report, but a full Mueller report. Protecting those that have to be constitutionally protected and statutorily protected, but we want to see the whole doggone thing. So this is going to be quite the exercise. Now, Congress goes out for a couple of weeks here in April, and my guess is that the AG will deliver the report while they're out, frustrating them even more, but mostly in redacted form. So stay tuned. But remember, Congress has a duty here. This is not just politics, it's duty. Coming home, just wanted to mention, this is interesting, front page headlines, and everybody covering this now request for proposals for a reuse of McCoy Stadium. All I can say is shame on the state of Rhode Island, shame on the administration, the Romano administration, shame on the Speaker of the House. Not so much shame on the Senate President, because he tried to get this thing done with the Paw Sox. But now we're left with the tatters and this half-baked idea that they're going to see if there are some sports franchises out there that want to take over this facility. Look, the facility needed $50 to $60 million of renovation just to keep it like it is. So I don't know who thinks what about bringing a new sports franchise in, albeit soccer or whatever. You know that the renovations are going to be in the 8-figure. I got a college president here and I don't even know my math. Tens of millions of dollars. That would be the 8-figure mark, yes. And I don't know who's going to do that. And I have to tell you, if this ends up being some RFP response that looks for a private partnership, let me see this again, public-private partnership. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers in the pickled pepper patch. Private-public partnership, it will be the same formula that we rejected to keep the Paw Sox. And it paid for itself. Likely, this is going to be a no return type of exercise. And the real story is going to be downtown revitalization, some kind of draw downtown, perhaps still Apex building, and the right move most likely will be that all the municipal complexes in Pawtucket will be moved over to the McCoy Stadium area. That stadium will be raised, meaning knocked down, and the entire Roosevelt Boulevard section will be the economic zone for Pawtucket. They can still build a Riverwalkish type of scene there, and somebody's got to just, in the middle of this whole thing, just step up and say, look, that's the only thing to do. The mayor knows it, but he's going to play the state out as the guilty complex of the state rolls out the request for proposals. It's a shame. The whole thing is just a shame, and you shouldn't be fooled by any of this. All right, a couple of headlines here covering the conversation for tonight. Raimondo's budget plan would extend to Rhode Island College. There he is, ready for debate. You know, the pitches continue to be thrown. Can I remind you what the governor had to say about this in her last State of the State?
Those recent test scores are not acceptable, not good enough for our kids. We have lagged behind our neighbors for far too long.
Raimondo pledging to invest an additional $30 million in local schools and bring universal pre-K to the state by the end of her term. For students on the other end of their educational careers, she proposes an expansion of the Promise Scholarship, which currently offers 2 free years of tuition at CCRI.
So this year, I propose we expand what's working. I propose we expand the Promise to Rhode Island College to cover the last 2 years of a 4-year degree at Rhode Island College.
She says she hopes to do the same at URI by the end of her term.
What you didn't see was my good friend Dave Dooley sitting. As you're like, yeah! He's like, you know.
Yeah.
Did you see the coverage of you standing, by the way? Did you catch?
I saw a little bit.
President Dooley, a little bit like,
No,
you and Meg are, CCRI president, and my goodness. Welcome.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
No, it's good to see you again, Dan.
The premise that I need to establish for this conversation one more time is that I am incredibly bullish on Rhode Island College. This has nothing to do with the capability of Rhode Island College. In fact, it's really interesting. In the last couple of weeks, I've bumped into some people socially who talked about their kids going to Rhode Island College, and the continued conversation goes like this. Why pursue degrees, the likes of which Rhode Island College is so well known for, at $50,000, $60,000, and $70,000 a year levels at the premier, quote, institutions, and carry the debt burden?
That's right.
That doesn't necessarily equate to the professional choice. In other words, social work is, some would say, God's work. It's not the most lucrative profession you can choose, right? Nursing, we need them. And you can make a good living as a nurse.
That's right.
But having a $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year debt piling up in order to be able to achieve that profession. So let's talk about that first before we get into the promise.
Sure.
Let's remind everybody what Rick brings to the table.
Yeah. Well, your point about debt, it's amazing when you think about that today in America, college debt has reached about $1.3 trillion. It has surpassed, and this is hard to believe, it's surpassed credit card debt in this country. And Rhode Island College has historically been among the lowest fee structures, tuition and fees, and it continues to produce amazing graduates, incredible education. And to this conversation, I think it's going to allow for more Rhode Islanders to not have to have the kind of debt that we're seeing all over this country. In fact, I would go a step further. I think it's one of the first times that there's actual investment in the working class and the middle class families who often get squeezed whenever there's increases in tuition rates. As you know, if you're a high income family, you have some resources, oftentimes can go to better schools, apply for more scholarship dollars. If you're low income, you're certainly eligible for federal financial aid, sometimes subsidized loans. But I gotta tell you, if you're a middle class family, working class family, and tuition keeps going up, you don't have access to a lot of resources. And actually, that's why I like the new Rhode Island College Promise model. Because what it says to working class, middle class families, and frankly all Rhode Islanders, it says, hey, if you are serious about a 4-year college degree, and you're willing to put some sweat equity in it on the front end, it's not free by any means, you have to pay full freight for the first 2 years. And that's not free. That's $19,000 in tuition for 2 years. On top of that, you have to show that you're on pace for a 4-year degree, which means 60 credit hours. I mean, that's a minimum of 15 credit hours each semester for 4 semesters. And then on top of that, a minimum GPA of 2.5. Until you hit all of those benchmarks, you don't qualify for anything. And then your junior year, after you've demonstrated, after you've put in that hard work on the front end, then you're eligible for the benefit your junior and senior year. And this is where I think there are some fairly immediate and direct benefits to the economy. When you don't have the kind of debt that you would otherwise have, you're more likely to buy a car, right? You're more likely to maybe to start up a business, maybe start saving and looking at buying a home when you don't have the type of college debt that we're seeing all over the country.
Well, obviously you were becoming deft at this argument. I was talking about the big picture, and you slipped the promise right into the middle of the conversation.
That was the topic.
True. 'Tis the topic. But I wonder whether this whole system of collegiate education is going to figure out a way to stop the momentum of this expense. That and some more argument about the Rhode Island Promise when we come back. Stay with us. All right, so here's a headline on the op-ed piece that Rick's president recently wrote about what the Rhode Island Promise is and what it is not. Listen, I'm not going to be able to fend off his deft arguments no matter what subject related to education I bring up. So why don't we just dig into it, and a little bit later I'm going to ask a couple of questions about the overall expense, because the number 70 is now becoming a norm. 60 was enough to shock the living daylights out of everybody, but in some of these finer institutions, if you will, I'm still hearing parents now talking about 70 as the room and board and the whole. I mean, holy mackerel. Okay, let me take the bait. What it is and what it isn't. What is it? Define it in short terms for me, the Rhode Island Promise. I mean, you explained a little bit in the last segment,
Sure.
But on your theme, it is what?
So I would say this is an incentive grant for Rhode Islanders. It says if you're wanting to get a 4-year degree, show us. Put some skin in the game. Work hard for 2 years. Go full time. Show us you're on pace for a 4-year degree. Minimum GPA 2.5, 60 credit hours. We're going to help you get over the finish line. But you got to show us first. One way to look at it is it's an incentive grant. I think it's going to motivate a lot of Rhode Islanders that want to get that support to work very hard for 2 years and then see that support on the end.
Is it also a marketing tool?
Yeah, I certainly hope so. I think it will attract a lot of families, as you are pointing out, when they hear $60,000, $70,000, even $40,000. I mean, if you think about it, Rhode Island College with no federal aid, you're looking at $38,000 of tuition over 4 years. That's a lot of money. And so I think there's a lot of families that are that will for the first time say, well, geez, if 2 years are covered, we can do that. We can do the first 2 years, about $19,000 and not have a lot of debt. And I think there's going to be a lot of families that will look twice, maybe 3 times at Rhode Island College and say, I think we can make that work.
Okay, what is it not? What's your argument of what it's not?
So what it's not, I think the notion that somehow it's similar to what CCRI was. It's not free, first of all. You got to pay for your first 2 years. It's also not, there's this perception, well, geez, I'll do my first 2 years at CCRI, and then I'll do my last 2 years, my junior and senior year at Rhode Island College. It's not that either. Either you do your first 2 years at CCRI, or you do your first 2 years at Rhode Island College, pay for them, and then your junior and senior years.
Can't double up.
You can't double up. You can't double dip on this one.
You write it's not free tuition. Of course it is. I'm not sure how you square that. You make great arguments, but in order to win the day, I think you got to stipulate to a couple things. The tuition is free. It's as simple as that. Yes.
Well,
for those 2 years, the tuition is no charge. You get a waiver. You do not have to pay that tuition.
Well, ask any Rhode Islander, $19,000, whether it's in your first 2 years or all 4 years. That's not free. That's a lot of money. Anybody's pocketbook. That $19,000, you got to pay that.
Well, what it is, I mean, there's a couple of ways to look at it. If you look at the math, I mean, if it's $19,000 for 2 years now, it's $38,000, as you said, for 4 years. You just have the price of tuition.
And that's to your point earlier. Tuition has gotten so
we can say it any way you
out of
want to,
yeah.
but right?
Yeah, tuition has gotten so out there that we've kind of forgotten that that's a lot of money to be paying for. And $19,000 is still a lot. And some people have said, I've heard people say, geez, we're kind of right-sizing tuition finally. It's an interesting way to look at the promise. $19,000 is still a lot of money. Look at our tuition 20 years ago. You know, it was, $3,000, $2,500, $3,000, and now it's $9,000. And so I think there's a good case to be made. To your point earlier, we have to continue to look at how to reduce the out-of-pocket expense in general. You're talking about, tuition in general. Look at books. On average, the national average cost for textbooks today on an annual basis is $900. And so we've said at Rhode Island College that we have to do something about that. So a year ago, we started with open source textbooks where you can get them online. We saved Rhode Islanders and our students $100,000 in textbook expenses. This year, it's going to be $300,000 savings in textbook expenses. And over 1,200 students are going to have an open source textbook at Rhode Island College. And so that's another way of reducing the out-of-pocket
Well, I mean,
expense.
this is common ground for me. I'm still involved in the game, in the financing of education for my former child, now young adult. I just think that even the $38,000 number for 4 years is just such a good ROI. Such a good ROI that the juxtaposition between the governor's desire to kind of brand something and the value. Listen, a lot of people place brand value on price. I worry that Rhode Island College suffers from a misinformed reputation, and freeing it up for a couple of years or delivering the promise might accelerate that misunderstanding. And I just, especially if you're in a recruiting mode the way you are, and in a rebuild mode the way you are, up against the rest of the marketplace, I just think the more you discount something, the less value it appears to have.
I think it's a good point. It's clear, Rhode Island College, we've been the best kept secret for too long. It's not a good thing. It's not good to say that anymore. We can't be a secret. People need to know us. In fact, this fall, I'm happy to share with you, there will be a reintroduction of Rhode Island College through media, through television, through billboards, because we have to do a better job conveying that you can still get a high quality, an exceptional degree, and not have to pay the rate. I maybe disagree with you a little bit. I think we can do a better job conveying that, yes, it's a low cost, but let's just take nursing, for example. A couple quarters ago, we hit 100% pass rate on the national exam. On the NCLEX national exam, our nurses hit 100% pass rate. You're not going to find that level of quality, or it's going to be rare to find that level of quality anywhere in the region. And now, of course, with the new Nursing Education Center, it really, truly a world-class facility with the university there and with Brown University. And so we have to do, and this is on us, we have to do a better job telling the Rhode Island College story, talking about the level of excellence, of quality, and now innovation that's happening at the institution. And it can be reasonably priced. What the promise does, if the promise goes through, it actually could create among the most affordable four-year college degrees in the entire nation.
Okay. Obviously, the president is sold on this idea. When does, by the way, this collegiate tuition bubble burst? We'll talk about that next. In action, the president, the governor, talking about stuff, I guess, this Rhode Island Promise. Again, who knows if URI's in the hopper. The governor tried to get this Rhode Island Promise program done for all three public institutions. CCRI, which I think is also undervalued in this state, not necessarily the brunt of jokes anymore, used to be. Rhode Island College. It's never been the brunt of jokes, but I think it's been misunderstood. And URI is such a thriving institution. And I joke with Dr. Dooley over this, he got left out of this next one because she's trying to piecemeal this. She tried to go in for all 3, and she got 1, and now she's going back in for 2. I admire her tenacity on this. I do. I don't know that in fact, I know that I don't buy into the program in its total concepts, but I'm not here to pontificate. I think the president of Rhode Island College has done a good job arguing for this. I was thinking about this nursing thing. I had a young relative of mine who's at an institution whose tuition is heading toward $70,000 a year, and his girlfriend is a nursing major.
Sure.
And I said, well, what? How does that make any sense? And he said, well, we're now in the top 5 of the nation in nursing. Well, great. I don't think a patient's going to ask about that when you're checking my blood pressure. I honestly, do you find that the academic curriculums from the alleged top 5s versus Rhode Island College are any different? I mean, you just talked to us about 100% compliance or passage on the national test.
If I'm really honest, I don't. I think the quality of the graduate, there's not a huge difference in the quality. Now, if you're into the brand name, and certainly the alumni network, those aren't things to kind of look to the side.
I don't know in that profession that it's going to get you that much more.
No,
it's not like you're going to Wall Street where all of a sudden the whole thing can explode for you.
Yeah.
It's these professions that you choose out of earnest motive. I think you just got to be pragmatic about it.
Yeah.
Short answer, because we're almost out of time. Is this bubble going to burst at some point?
I think so.
And how will it burst?
I think you're going to see more college universities start to plateau their tuition rate. And I think at some point, maybe not for the elite, but a lot of the middle ground state colleges, I think they're going to plateau. And then I think the price is going to need to start going down because of the competition, both online and other new types of college universities that are emerging. I think the tuition rate is going to plateau, and then it's going to start going down. And who can have the highest quality degree at a reasonable expense?
Okay, what do you want people to do? Contact their legislators to support the Rhode Island Promise?
Oh, we would love folks certainly to support our middle class and working class
That's
families.
too easy, isn't it?
Yeah.
So,
No,
that's
I think
exactly what you want to do. That's why you're here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's a great opportunity for a lot of Rhode Islanders who wouldn't otherwise consider coming.
Show off, big thing in Tweed River, real quick. You got something going on later in the month.
So April 25th, Celebration of the Arts. It's our annual gala. Raise money for tuition to try to keep expenses down at college, showcasing a number of our student artists and performers, as well as a number of alum that are coming out to showcase their art as well.
Tickets available.
Tickets are available online,
All
absolutely.
Right. And check out Rhode Island College website for that. Good luck with this. Always great to see you.
Thank you so much, Dan.
Final word and we can back. Stay with us. So the state Republican Party has reorganized itself. Of course, it fell a little bit flat on its face the first working day after they chose a new chairperson because their infighting, which is part of their culture, came right away when the governor's wife decided that she was going to pull out of a key committee because of the support that the new chairman doesn't offer for the firefighter community. And it was all kind of weird. And then she suggested that she more or less was running the governor nominee's Cranston mayor's whole strategy in this, which is a marriage counseling mess, seems to me. Anyway, we'll talk to Sue Cienki. She's got the new gig coming up tomorrow. And of course, we'll see you on the radio or talk to you at 3 until 6 on WPRO. Good night.